Josh, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to teach you how to put fiberglass insulation in the walls. We're going to do both faced and unfaced insulation today, so I can show you the techniques on both. Oh, this is my favorite part of doing insulation right here. It gets huge! Alright, so on this wall and that wall, we're doing unfaced. And the reason why we're doing unfaced there is, one, it's cheaper, but two, we can get away with it because basically the insulation is going to be pinched between this exterior sheathing and the drywall. So that's going to hold it firmly in place. These other walls out here where we got to do insulation, there's nothing for the insulation to kind of hold up against because it's going to be open on that back side. So we got to do paper face and staple it, to the studs. But here we can do unfaced, and the goal with the insulation is you want it to fluff up good. So your R value comes from it being in its like expanded form. And so, like for instance, this distance here is 19 inches and the insulation is 23 inches. It's going to smash too much and you'll lose your R value. So we're going to cut it down about an inch bigger than the hole. So it'll still have, some friction to hold it up there, but it won't be squished. So that's kind of rule of thumb number one is about a ½ inch to an inch bigger than the opening. And then like on this next bay, when we get to it, you want to make sure that you're cutting out your boxes out of the insulation. So I'm just using a straight 2x4 as a straight edge, and put my tape on there 20 inches. Like that. I'll cut on that side. When you're doing fiberglass insulation, you definitely want to wear a mask because this will make it so you can't breathe very well for a while, and you don't want that. I'm just using a basic utility knife. They do have knives that are specifically for insulation, but I've always just used the utility knife and it works just fine. But put some pressure down on that 2x4, it squishes it down, then it's pretty easy to cut. My walls are a little bit taller than 8 feet, so I'm going to set this down at the bottom and put my cut piece at the top. These bats are like 93 inches or something. So this next one's a little bit wide because the truss framing is a little bit weird. So I'm going to use that piece to fill in. Hopefully it works all right. What you don't want to happen is not cut that box out and then just squish it, because then behind your box and right here and here you're going to have like this little space that's not insulated. So you want to make sure that you're cutting out for your box. In my case, since this is a little bit gappy, I'm just going to cut that other strip of insulation from this piece and stick it in there. I cut the insulation out for that box, so this chunk is going to go in behind the electrical box. Alright, so here's another instance where I got to cut insulation around something so it's not squished. Because if I just do that, there's a big old space there. So I cut around this 2x6. There is a little space there behind it, so I'm going to leave a little bit of insulation on this backside. You cut the shape of it and it'll just peel away. and that fits. You just kind of fluff it up, make it nice and tight around there, just like that. When I'm cross-cutting this stuff, I just use like 4-foot level or 2-foot level if I'm doing 16-inch bats. When I'm doing the 24-inch bats, I like to measure both sides of the cut. If I'm doing 16-inch bats, I just eyeball it square because it's pretty easy. And kind of same deal, just push your straight edge down. That squishes the insulation, and then it cuts super easy, like that. Measured 12.5, so I'm going to cut it 13.5. Alright, I ran this one a little longer so I could show you cutting around the electrical box. That other one was a little weird, so basically I just jam the insulation in there and then at the top and bottom of the box. And then kind of feel where it's at. Go this way. And then that just peels away. I have to go a little deeper. Like that. In this situation here where these wires kind of are going out into the insulation space, I'm going to split the insulation. I don't know if I can do it one-handed. There we go. See, I split it so I can jam it in behind those wires. That way it's not squished. See? Nice and tight around that box. So, split around the wires. Alright, and for the remainder there, just going to basically jam my tape up there and add, I don't know, 1/2 inch or so to the measurement, and that should make it nice and tight. And yeah, just cross cut them, pretty simple. So 15.5, we'll cut it at 16, should be good. Alright, I'm going to bust out the rest of this and bust out the other wall there, and we'll move on to the craft face. Right here I've got a wire going through, and you're going to have that pretty often. So what I do, I just split this insulation down the middle, and then kind of pull it up behind that wire. And the other thing I do, though, I like to push it in and then maybe a little bit past and then pull it back out. And what that does is it allows the backside of the insulation to kind of grip the wood, and then when you pull it back out, it fluffs it up. That way it's all nice and fluffy and full R value. That's what you want. Alright, got a little wild in here this morning because sheetrock came, so kind of a mess in here. But so thankful that GTS is able to deliver so quickly and just boomed it right through the window hole, which is awesome. I've got a whole bunch of the face insulation up on both sides. Got a little bit left, so I'm going to show you how to do the face insulation. It's very, very similar to the unfaced, except you got to staple it, and but you're still just like cutting around the boxes and whatnot. So got a box cut out there, the light box up there, And I think these two bays need to be ripped, so I'll show you that. But yeah, just about done with the walls, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, it's just the same concept. You're cutting out the like cubic space of the box. Cut the paper out. You're going to want to make sure that your knife is nice and sharp, because this paper doesn't always cut real well, especially if your knife is dull. And then I just take a whacker tacker, you know, a hammer stapler, and staple it on. You could also use a squeeze stapler, but I prefer this style. Again, wear a mask. When I cut craft-based insulation, I cut it with the paper side down. It just seems to work the easiest for me. But same deal, put your straight edge on there, kind of press it down to compress the insulation, and then cut right through it. Sweet, all finished up. So yeah, that's basically the process. Same as the unfaced insulation. Just make sure you're cutting around everything. So there were some 2x4s and whatnot that I had to cut around, notch to make sure that the insulation is not squished anywhere. Cut it nicely around any electrical boxes. And then just use a stapler and pull that little paper flap over, staple it to the studs. Pretty simple. Here's all the tools I used for this project. Got a tape measure, Fat Max, only tape measure you should ever buy. Hammer stapler, utility knife, couple levels just for straight edge purposes, and then one long 2x4, 8-foot 2x4. So I'll put a link to all those down in the description. If you're needing to pick up some tools, I'll link the ones that I use down in the description. Also, got my email list down in the description. Be sure to sign up for that. I'm working on some tools to help you guys get into the trades if you're interested. So make sure you sign up for that. Probably a few months out on it, but you don't want to miss it. Yeah, and if you have any questions on the process of putting wall insulation in, please leave them in the comments below. All right, thanks for watching. See you next time.